So what does true fearlessness actually mean? Is it just, the absence of external threats?
Like not being scared of spiders or
Mm.
walking home in the dark.
Exactly. Or could it be something, well, much deeper, something that comes from within?
An inner state, maybe?
Hmm.
An unshakable kind of calm.
That's what we're exploring today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Mm?
We're taking a journey back, way back, to an ancient monastery, the Vilvana.
Right.
And we're going to unpack this really fascinating exchange. It involves the Buddha, his monks, and a young man named Uggasena.
Yes, Uggasena.
Our mission, really, is to get into this concept of sabasanyojana.
The cutting of all fetters.
Exactly. And see how this ancient teaching, from the source material we have, points towards, well, profound inner peace, real fearlessness.
Sounds good. A deep dive indeed.
So the scene is set at the Veluvana monastery. The Buddha's there.
Mm-hmm.
And the key figure is this young man, Uggasena. He's a merchant's son.
Okay.
And he's caused a bit of a stir because he's been going around saying, basically, I'm not afraid.
Nabayami, in the original Pali.
Right. And the monks, they hear this and they're concerned.
They seem quite troubled by it, actually. They go straight to the Buddha.
Yeah, reporting what Uggasena said, it definitely sets up a puzzle, doesn't it?
It really does. And what's interesting is why they're concerned.
What was their take on it?
Well, they seem to suspect he's maybe overstating things, perhaps claiming he's reached enlightenment, the arahant state.
Ah, so they thought he was boasting. Or maybe, like the source says, speaking of something that isn't true.
Exactly. Which shows, even they might have misunderstood what real fearlessness means. It's clearly not just bravado.
You've hit on it. They seem to have missed the deeper meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the Buddha steps in and really clarifies things. His response completely reframes the idea.
How does he respond?
He says, quite clearly, monks, my disciples, who are like my own sons and have cut off the fetters, are indeed not afraid.
So he links it directly to cutting off these fetters.
Precisely. It elevates the whole discussion. It's not about a simple claim anymore.
Right. It's about an achieved inner state.
And then he recites this powerful verse, a gatha, that really gets to the heart of it.
Okay, what's the verse?
He recites, Sabasanyon chitave yoven parahatasati sugatega visayutta tamha brumi brahman.
Wow. Powerful words.
And the translation we have is, whoever, having cut off all fetters, truly does not tremble him, I call a brahmana, one who has gone beyond attachment, one who is unyoked.
Does not tremble. That's key.
It really is, especially that phrase, cut off all fetters. Let's unpack that. What exactly are these fetters, according to the source? Sabasanyojana?
Well, the source specifies this means the 10 kinds of fetters, or dasavidha sanyojana.
10 kinds. Okay.
And these aren't literal chains, obviously. They're psychological bonds. Deep-seated ones.
Like what sort of things?
Things like our rigid sense of self, I, me, mine. Also, nagging doubts, clinging to rituals just for their own sake, sensual desire, ill will, and even subtler things like pride, restlessness, ignorance. They're internal anchors, really.
Internal chains we kind of forge ourselves that prevent real freedom.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. They keep us tied to suffering and attachment.
Then there's that other phrase, naparitasati, does not tremble or is not agitated. And you mentioned it's a crucial distinction. It's not just about physical bravery, is it?
Absolutely not. That's the core insight here.
Yeah.
The text is specific. It means it's not afraid of craving. Tanhayana bhayanti.
Afraid of craving. How does that work?
Think about it. So many of our fears, our anxieties, they don't actually come from direct external threats, do they?
Maybe not directly.
Often they stem from wanting something we don't have, or fearing losing what we do have. That constant pull of desire of wanting more or different.
Okay, I see that. The fear of lack or the fear of loss, driven by wanting.
Exactly. And the teaching here is that when that internal engine of fear craving loses its grip, that's when genuine fearlessness arises.
So it's an inside job, really, an internal shift.
Completely. An internal revolution, not just putting on a brave face.
And then the Buddha uses the term brahmana for this person, someone who has gone beyond attachment, one who is unyoked.
Right. Which is interesting because brahmana traditionally referred to a priestly caste.
So he's redefining it here, based on inner qualities, not birth.
Precisely. He's saying a true brahmana, in his view, is defined by this inner state of liberation.
And what does gone beyond attachment or unyoked really mean in practical terms? What are they free from?
Well, beyond attachment, Sagati again refers to transcending those sagas attachments like greed, aversion, delusion, clinging to views, the whole lot.
Okay.
And unyoked, visayuta, means they're disconnected, disjoined from the four kinds of yogas.
Yogas, like a downward dog.
Huh, no, not yoga poses.
Yeah.
In this context, yogas are like bonds or yokes binding mental forces. Think of sensuality, craving for existence, holding wrong views, and ignorance.
Some things that tie us down mentally.
Exactly. They keep us yoked to that cycle of suffering. Imagine being pulled around by these invisible ropes.
Right.
Someone who is unyoked has cut those ropes. They're free from those compulsions, no longer pulled this way and that by internal states.
So they achieve a kind of fundamental inner peace, unshakable.
That's the idea. A profound shift in how they relate to everything.
Yeah.
Because those binding forces are gone.
It's really striking how these ancient concepts, fetters, craving, being unyoked,
Right.
they still feel so relevant.
They absolutely do. It speaks directly to the human condition, doesn't it?
It really illustrates how dealing with these internal things, craving, attachment is the real path. It leads to that state where you genuinely do not tremble inside.
Right. It's not about being tough on the outside or avoiding scary situations.
No, it's about that deep inner liberation, freedom from the internal triggers of fear.
Absolutely. This isn't about, playing the hero.
Yeah.
True fearlessness, the kind described here, isn't a boast. It's not an act you put on.
It's that deep, steady calm you find when you're not constantly fighting your own desires or terrified of losing things.
Mm-hmm. It arises naturally when those internal bonds are severed.
And the impact was significant, wasn't it? The source says many people listening actually attained noble fruits.
Yeah, it mentions many people attained various noble fruits, starting with Sotapadiphala.
Stream entry. That's a major step on the path.
It really is. It just highlights how transformative this understanding can be when it truly lands.
So thinking about this, maybe for you listening, what kinds of attachments or cravings might be holding you back? What keeps you from that deeper sense of fearlessness?
It's a powerful question.
So just to recap the core idea from this Uggasena story,
Mm-hmm.
real, authentic fearlessness isn't about just saying, I'm not afraid.
No, it comes from that much deeper work. Severing those internal bonds, the attachments.
Cutting the fetters, it's about tackling the roots of that inner agitation, that trembling inside. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Consider if focusing on reducing your own inner trembling by looking at your attachments, like this ancient text suggests, might be a more effective path to well-being than just trying to manage external fears.
It shifts the focus inward.
Right. What fetters might you start to notice in your own life? Things that, if you really understood them, could lead you towards a greater sense of calm and maybe even true freedom.